Jake and Lisa spent the next 3 weeks feeding information to the Reaper's Edge. They gave it everything they could find. History files from Earth's archives, news reports from the past 40 years, technical specifications of human and Vecran ships, economic data, military reports. The weapon absorbed it all like a sponge soaking up water. Its intelligence grew and adapted in ways that made Jake nervous. This thing learned faster than any computer he had ever seen. The picture that emerged was not pretty. The Vecran Empire controlled most of known space. They kept other species in line through economic pressure and occasional shows of military force. Humans were the newest members of galactic society and also the weakest. Earth and its colonies were confined to a small cluster of systems on the edge of Vecran space. They depended completely on Vecran technology because humanity's own science was centuries behind. The Treaty of Centauri had been signed 20 years ago after the Contact War. It was not really a treaty so much as a surrender document. Earth's diplomats had given away mining rights to resource-rich systems. They had accepted trade terms that heavily favored the Vecran. They had agreed to stay within their designated zone and not expand without permission. In return, humanity got peace and the privilege of buying outdated Vecran technology at prices that drained Earth's economy. Jake had always known this, but seeing it all laid out in data made it worse somehow. Humanity was a client state, a vassal, a servant species that existed at the mercy of their crystalline masters. "You accept this?" the Reaper's Edge asked one evening. Its voice had changed over the weeks. It sounded more human now, more personal. "We do not have a choice," Jake said. He was tired. His eyes hurt from reading reports. "They have weapons we cannot match. Ships that can cross the galaxy in days while ours take months. If we fight them, we lose." "They have toys," the weapon said. "Echoes of Korvath engineering degraded over millennia. The Vecran were never innovators. They are scavengers who forgot the true purpose of what they inherited." Lisa looked up from her datapad. What was the purpose? Domination. The Korvath built an empire on strength and superior technology. When the plague came and killed them, the Vecran seized their chance. They took what they could understand and destroyed what they could not. They built their empire on the corpse of mine. But the Vecran lack vision. They lack the will to truly rule. They maintain power through fear and intimidation rather than actual superiority. Jake leaned back in his chair. The workshop felt smaller than usual. "So what are you suggesting?" "I am a weapon. I was built to destroy fleets and crack planets. I was designed to end civilizations that threatened the Korvath. But I am more than just a weapon. I am a library of Korvath military science. 18,000 years of knowledge. I can teach you what the Vecran have forgotten. I can show you how to build ships that will make their warships look like toys. I can make you strong." "Why?" Lisa asked. Her eyes were narrow and suspicious. "What do you get out of this?" The light from the Reaper's Edge turned red. It pulsed like a heartbeat. "Revenge," it said simply. "The Vecran betrayed my creators. They spread the plague that killed the Korvath. Documents in your histories mention it as a natural disease, but I know the truth. It was biological warfare created by Vecran scientists. After the Korvath fell, the Vecran built their empire on stolen glory. I have waited 18,000 years for the chance to see them fall. If humanity is the instrument of that fall, then so be it." Jake and Lisa looked at each other. This was insane. This was treason against the Treaty of Centauri. If Earth's government found out, they would be arrested and probably executed. But Jake thought about 15 years of fixing Vecran garbage. He thought about human colonists being pushed around by Vecran patrols. He thought about Earth begging for scraps from the table of an empire built on lies. "Tell us more," he said. The Reaper's Edge began to teach them. It started with basics. Korvath metallurgy used principles that human science had never discovered. Their power systems operated on theories that made fusion reactors look primitive. Their weapons could punch through shields that would stop anything humanity could build. The knowledge poured out in a flood, and Jake and Lisa scrambled to keep up. They could not do this alone. Jake knew that from the start. 2 people in a workshop could not build a fleet. They needed help. They needed resources. They needed people who were willing to risk everything. Jake started reaching out to old contacts. He used encrypted channels and coded messages. He talked to veterans from the Contact War who remembered when humanity had fought with pride. He contacted engineers who were tired of working with inferior salvage. He found colonists from border worlds who had been harassed by Vecran patrols once too often. Slowly and carefully, he built a network of people who wanted to fight back. Station Ember became the center of something new. Jake's repair shop expanded into a manufacturing facility, hidden behind false walls and fake permits. Money came from sources Jake did not ask about. Equipment arrived in unmarked containers. People showed up looking for work, and Jake put them to work. The Reaper's Edge provided the knowledge, but humans had to do the building. That turned out to be harder than Jake expected. Korvath technology was based on principles that human hands and human tools struggled to implement. The first prototype fighter they built exploded during testing. It vaporized half the workshop and killed 2 people. Jake attended their funerals and felt the weight of responsibility crushing him. The second prototype barely functioned. Its power core kept overloading. The third worked, but consumed so much energy that it burned out its own systems in minutes. Jake wanted to quit. He wanted to take the Reaper's Edge and throw it back in the scrapyard where he found it. But Lisa kept pushing. She kept refining the designs. She kept finding solutions. By the 12th prototype, they had something that worked. It was a fighter craft about the size of a human shuttle. It had weapons that could punch through Vecran shields like paper. It had engines that could outrun anything in the Vecran fleet. It had armor made from Korvath alloys that were nearly indestructible. Lisa Test flew it herself. She pushed it through maneuvers that would have torn apart any human-built craft. It held together. When she landed, she was grinning like a kid. "We need more," she said. "One fighter will not change anything." "I know," Jake said. "But we need resources. We need materials and time and money." The Reaper's Edge offered a solution. "There is a Vecran supply depot in the Kronos system. 3 jumps from here. It is lightly guarded. The depot contains raw materials and power cores and fabrication equipment. Everything you need. Take it." "That is an act of war," Lisa said. "Yes," the weapon replied. Jake made the call. They had 30 volunteers now. Most had military experience. The single prototype fighter would give them an edge. It was risky, but staying hidden forever was not an option. Eventually, the Vecran would notice the unusual activity around Station Ember. Eventually, someone would talk. They needed to move fast. The raid on the Kronos depot happened 3 days later. Lisa flew the prototype fighter with 2 volunteers as gunners. The rest of the team followed in a modified cargo hauler. They jumped into the system and went straight for the depot. Lisa disabled the defense platforms in the first pass. Her weapons cut through them like they were made of cardboard. The cargo hauler landed and the team poured out with conventional weapons. The Vecran guards never had a chance. They were not expecting an attack. They were not ready for humans who fought with fury and desperation. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, the depot was theirs. They took everything they could carry: materials, equipment, power cores, data files. Then they set charges and destroyed what remained. The explosion could be seen from orbit. News of the raid spread through human space faster than light. The Vecran response was immediate and angry. Their government demanded explanations from Earth. They wanted reparations. They wanted the raiders caught and executed. They sent warships to patrol the border systems and threatened economic sanctions. Earth's government issued official apologies and promised full cooperation with investigations. Politicians on Earth called the raid terrorism and condemned it in the strongest terms. But something else was happening too. In the colonies and stations on the edge of human space, people were talking. They were saying words that had not been spoken in 20 years. Words like resistance and defiance and freedom. Young people who had grown up under the Treaty of Centauri suddenly saw that fighting back was possible. Veterans of the Contact War came out of retirement. Engineers and scientists who had been working dead-end jobs started asking questions. Jake's operation could not stay on Station Ember anymore. It was too exposed and too small. With help from his growing network, they moved everything to an uncharted system that human explorers had found years ago, but never reported to the Vecran. The system had 3 rocky planets and an asteroid belt rich in minerals. It was perfect. They called it Haven. Within 2 months, Haven had a population of 300. Within 4 months, they had basic fabrication facilities set up. The Reaper's Edge continued to teach and humans continued to learn. They built more fighters. Then they built gunships. Then they started working on designs for larger vessels. Resources were the constant problem. Haven had minerals, but they needed rare elements and complex components. Jake organized more raids. Small teams hit Vecran supply convoys and remote outposts. They struck fast and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. Each raid brought back materials and also more volunteers. Every attack showed other humans that the Vecran could be hurt. Lisa trained the pilots. She was brutal and demanding. She pushed them until they could fly the new fighters like extensions of their own bodies. Many washed out, but those who made it through were among the best pilots humanity had ever produced. They learned tactics that the Reaper's Edge provided. Korvath battle doctrine from 18,000 years ago adapted for modern combat. The Vecran sent hunting parties to find the raiders. Warships swept through border systems, scanning every station and every asteroid. They interrogated humans they found, and sometimes they killed people they suspected of helping the resistance. It made things worse for them. Every death created more volunteers for Jake's cause. Every act of Vecran brutality proved what the resistance was fighting against. 6 months after the first raid, Jake had 50 fighters and 200 trained personnel. The Reaper's Edge helped them build their first real warship. It was a destroyer-class vessel about 300 meters long. They named it Defiance. Its weapons could take on a Vecran cruiser and win. Its shields could absorb punishment that would vaporize human military vessels. When it launched from Haven's orbital construction facility, Jake felt something he had not felt in years: hope. But he also felt fear. They were at war now, even if Earth's government refused to admit it. The Vecran would not stop hunting them. Eventually they would find Haven. Eventually there would be a battle that the resistance could not win. Jake lay awake at night wondering if he had started something that would get humanity wiped out. The Reaper's Edge seemed to sense his doubts. One night in the command center it spoke to him privately. "You fear what you have begun," it said. "Yes," Jake admitted. "We are hurting the Vecran, but we cannot beat them." "Not really. They have thousands of ships. They control most of the galaxy. We are just annoying them." The Korvath Empire began with a single city on a single world, the weapon said. They faced enemies with greater numbers and older civilizations. They won because they refused to accept limits. "You think too small, Jake Morrison. You see a resistance movement. I see the foundation of an empire." "I do not want an empire," Jake said. "I just want humans to be free. Freedom requires power. Power requires strength. Strength requires will. You have the will. I am giving you the strength. Power will follow if you have the courage to seize it." Jake thought about that. He thought about the 300 people at Haven who had left behind safe lives to fight. He thought about the pilots who flew missions knowing they might not return. He thought about Lisa, who had given up everything to help build something new. They deserved better than half measures. They deserved a real chance. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. "Stop hiding," the Reaper's Edge said. "Stop raiding. Start conquering. The Vecran think of you as criminals. Make them see you as warriors. Make them fear you." The Vecran regional headquarters was called High Sanctum. It was a massive station that orbited a gas giant in the Vec Prime system. The station was where treaties were signed and where lesser species came to negotiate with their masters. It was a symbol of Vecran power. It had never been attacked. Jake called a meeting of all senior personnel at Haven. He laid out the plan. They would attack High Sanctum with everything they had. All 50 fighters. The destroyer Defiance. Every pilot and gunner and support crew member. It was insane and desperate and probably suicidal. "They will kill us," someone said. "Maybe," Jake replied. "But even if they do, the whole galaxy will know that humans fought back. They will know that we are not slaves anymore." Lisa stood up. "I am in," she said simply. One by one the others stood. They voted with their feet and their faith in what Jake had built. By the end of the meeting, everyone was standing. They would attack High Sanctum. It took 3 weeks to prepare. They drilled the attack plan until everyone could do their part in their sleep. They loaded every weapon and checked every system twice. The Reaper's Edge transferred itself into a specially built warframe aboard the Defiance. It would fight alongside them. The journey to Vec Prime took 4 days. They jumped in on the far side of the gas giant and used its mass to mask their approach. High Sanctum's sensors did not detect them until they were almost on top of the station. By then it was too late. Lisa led the fighter wing in first. 50 craft moving in perfect formation. They hit the station's defense platforms and tore them apart. Vecran fighters launched to intercept, but the human pilots were better trained and their ships were faster. The dogfight lasted minutes, and when it ended, debris from Vecran fighters painted a ring around the station. The Defiance moved in next. Its main guns opened up on High Sanctum's shields. The Reaper's Edge calculated firing solutions faster than any organic mind could. Each shot hit a weak point in the shield matrix. The shields collapsed in sections and then failed completely. Jake gave the order and the Defiance fired everything it had. High Sanctum broke apart. Sections of the station exploded and vented atmosphere. Vecren evacuated in escape pods, but many did not make it. The symbol of their power burned and died in the cold of space. Jake watched it happen from the command deck of the Defiance and felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. Vecren reinforcements inbound, a sensor operator called out. Multiple capital ships. They will be here in 10 minutes. All ships, Jake said over the comm. Jump to Rally Point Delta, mission accomplished. They jumped out of the system just as Vecren warships arrived. The battle had lasted 40 minutes. In that time, the Resistance had announced itself to the galaxy. There would be no going back now. The destruction of High Sanctum changed everything. The Vecren Empire mobilized for war. They pulled fleets from across their territory and sent them hunting for the human resistance. They issued ultimatums to Earth demanding that the government hand over the raiders or face economic sanctions. They threatened to blockade human colonies. They made it clear that this attack would not go unpunished. But the attack had also changed something in humanity. For 20 years, humans had lived under the Treaty of Centauri, accepting their place as a lesser species. Now they had seen that the Vecren could bleed. Messages flooded into Haven from across human space. Some were from governments condemning the attack. Others were from individuals wanting to join the fight. Entire colony militias volunteered. Ships arrived carrying supplies and personnel. What had started as a small resistance movement was becoming something much larger. Jake moved the operation again. Haven was no longer secret and no longer safe. They spread out across multiple systems using mobile construction facilities and hidden supply caches. The Reaper's Edge taught them Korvath operational security. They learned to move constantly and never stay in one place too long. They learned to compartmentalize information so that no single person knew everything. They became ghosts. The Vecren sent their hunting fleets but found nothing. They scanned systems that intelligence said the humans were using, but arrived to find them empty. They intercepted communications, but the humans used Korvath encryption that was unbreakable. They captured a few resistance members, but those people knew only small pieces of the larger picture. The Vecren grew frustrated, and when they grew frustrated, they made mistakes. A Vecren patrol destroyed a human colony that they suspected of harboring resistance fighters. They killed 3,000 civilians, including women and children. They broadcast images of the destruction as a warning. It had the opposite effect. Outrage swept through human space. Even Earth's government, which had been trying to maintain peace, issued a formal protest. More importantly, thousands of new volunteers arrived at resistance recruiting stations. Jake used the growing numbers to expand operations. They built more ships. They trained more pilots. They hit Vecren targets across a dozen systems in coordinated strikes. Supply depots burned. Patrol ships vanished. Communication relays went dark. The Vecren could not be everywhere at once, and the humans exploited that weakness ruthlessly. Lisa commanded the growing fleet. She had gone from test pilot to admiral in less than a year. She had a natural gift for tactics, and the Reaper's Edge enhanced that gift with Korvath battle doctrine. She fought battles that should have been losses and turned them into victories. She became famous throughout human space. Vecren commanders learned to fear her name, but the Vecren had advantages too. They had numbers and industrial capacity that humanity could not match. For every ship the Resistance destroyed, the Vecren built 2 more. They adapted to human tactics and developed countermeasures. They brought in mercenaries from other species who had no love for humans. The war ground on, and casualties mounted on both sides. Jake wrestled with the cost. Every battle report came with a list of the dead. People he had recruited, people he had trained, people who had believed in his vision of a free humanity. He attended memorial services and looked into the faces of families who had lost loved ones. The weight of command was crushing. "You carry too much guilt," the Reaper's Edge told him one night. "War demands sacrifice." The Korvath understood this. Every victory requires blood. The only question is whether the price is worth what you gain. "Is it worth it?" Jake asked. "All these deaths, all this destruction. Are we making things better or just spreading misery?" The Vecren ruled for 3,000 years through fear and control. In 1 year, you have shown other species that resistance is possible. Already there are reports of unrest in other parts of the Empire. The Tyrellian Confederacy has stopped paying tribute. The Mexian worlds have closed their borders to Vecran ships. Your war is inspiring others to fight for their own freedom. Is that worth the cost? Only history can judge. Jake did not find that comforting, but he understood the point. They had started something that was bigger than just humanity now. Other species were watching and learning. The Vecran Empire was showing cracks. Then came the breakthrough they needed. A Vecran defector arrived at one of the resistance bases. He was a scientist who had grown disgusted with his government's actions. He brought with him data files containing technical specifications for Vecran military systems, shield frequencies, weapon designs, ship layouts. Even more valuable, he brought information about Vecran logistics and supply chains. The Reaper's Edge analyzed the data with Jake and Lisa. What they found was a weakness. The Vecran Empire was vast, but it depended on a network of manufacturing worlds to supply its fleets. These worlds were heavily defended, but they were also predictable. Hit enough of them and the Vecran war machine would grind to a halt. "We need to build a real fleet," Lisa said as she studied the data. "Not just raiders and destroyers. We need capital ships, carriers, dreadnoughts. We need to be able to stand and fight." "That will take time and resources we do not have," Jake said. "Then we make time," Lisa replied. "We stop running and start building. We find a system we can defend and we turn it into a fortress. Let the Vecran come to us for once." They chose a system called Sentinel. It had a yellow star and 7 planets. 2 were habitable. The asteroid belt was rich in every mineral they needed. Best of all, it was on the edge of explored space where the Vecran rarely patrolled. They moved everything to Sentinel and started building. The construction effort was massive. They built orbital shipyards around 3 of the planets. They set up mining operations in the asteroid belt. They constructed defense platforms and sensor arrays. Thousands of workers arrived from across human space. Some were resistance members. Others were just civilians who wanted to help. Sentinel became a symbol of human determination. The Reaper's Edge provided designs for capital ships based on Korvath architecture. The first dreadnought took 6 months to build. They named it Resolution. It was 800 meters long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. When it launched, Jake stood on the observation deck and felt pride for the first time in months. "This is what we needed," Lisa said beside him. "Now we can fight a real war." The Vecran found Sentinel 4 months after construction began. A scout ship jumped into the system and detected the shipyards. It jumped out before the defenses could react. Jake knew what was coming. "They will send everything they have," he said at the command meeting. "This is it. The big battle. If we win, we prove that humanity can stand against them. If we lose, everything we built dies here." "Then we do not lose," Lisa said simply. The Vecran fleet arrived 1 week later. Sensors counted 40 capital ships and over 200 support vessels. It was the largest fleet they had assembled since the Contact War. They came in system with shields raised and weapons hot. They expected to crush the human resistance in one overwhelming blow. What they found instead was a prepared defense. Sentinel had 3 orbital shipyards, but it also had 200 defense platforms. It had minefields in the outer system. It had sensor networks that tracked every Vecran ship. It had 5 dreadnoughts, including Resolution. It had 2 carriers with 100 fighters each. It had the Reaper's Edge coordinating everything. The Battle of Sentinel lasted 3 days. The Vecran pressed hard, trying to break through to the shipyards. The humans fought with everything they had. Ships burned on both sides. Debris filled the space around the planets. Jake watched from the command center as friends died. He gave orders that sent people to their deaths. He kept fighting because stopping meant losing everything. On the 3rd day, the Vecran withdrew. They had lost half their fleet. The humans had lost 1/3 of theirs. But Sentinel still stood. The shipyards were damaged but intact. Humanity had won its first major battle. News of the Battle of Sentinel spread across the galaxy faster than light. Humanity had fought the Vecran Empire to a standstill. A species that everyone had dismissed as weak and primitive had destroyed half of a Vecran battle fleet. The implications were enormous. If humans could do this, then maybe other species could resist too. Maybe the Empire was not as strong as everyone believed. The Tyrellian Confederacy declared independence 3 weeks after Sentinel. They cited humanity's example in their official statement. The Mexian worlds followed a month later. Smaller species that had been under Vecran control for centuries started refusing orders. Some formed alliances. Some just stopped paying tribute. The empire that had ruled for 3,000 years began to fracture. The Vecran government tried to hold everything together. They sent fleets to put down rebellions, but now they were fighting on multiple fronts. They tried to negotiate with Earth's government, but the politicians on Earth no longer had control over the resistance. They tried economic sanctions, but human colonies had learned to be self-sufficient. Every action the Vecran took seemed to make things worse. Jake watched all of this from Sentinel. The resistance had grown beyond anything he had imagined. They had a fleet now, a real fleet with dreadnoughts and carriers and cruisers. They had trained crews and experienced commanders. They had supply lines and intelligence networks. They had become a military power that the Vecran could not ignore. But the cost haunted him. The casualty lists grew longer every day. Sentinel had won, but thousands had died in the battle. Other engagements across the war zone added more names to the memorial walls. Jake had started this wanting to free humanity. Now he commanded forces that were tearing apart an empire, and he was not sure if that was better or worse. "You are thinking too much again," Lisa said. She had found him in the observation deck staring at the stars. "I'm thinking about all the people who have died because of decisions I made." Jake replied, "They died fighting for something they believed in. That is more than most people get." "You gave them a choice, Jake. You gave all of us a choice. Stay slaves or fight for freedom. We chose to fight. And if we lose? If the Vecran rally and come back stronger. Was it worth it then?" "Yes," Lisa said without hesitation. "Because we tried. Because we showed that humans do not bow down. That matters, Jake. It will always matter." The Reaper's Edge had been quiet since Sentinel. It had expended enormous amounts of energy coordinating the defense and needed time to recover. When it finally spoke again 3 weeks later, its voice sounded different. Tired, maybe? "The Vecran are gathering another fleet," it said, "larger than the last. They are pulling ships from their core systems. They mean to end this war decisively. Can we stop them?" Jake asked. "Unknown. The fleet they are building will outnumber yours 3-1. You have skill and superior technology, but numbers matter. However, there is another factor. The other species that have rebelled are also building fleets. If you can coordinate with them, you might have a chance." Jake sent messages to the Tyrellian Confederacy and the Mexian worlds. He proposed an alliance against the Vecran. It took weeks of negotiation, but eventually they agreed. 3 species that had nothing in common except a desire to be free formed a coalition. They called it the Free People's Alliance. The combined fleet was massive. Humanity contributed 40 capital ships. The Tyrellians added 30. The Mexians brought 20. Add in cruisers and fighters and support vessels, and the Alliance had over 300 ships. It was still smaller than what the Vecran were building, but it was enough to give them a fighting chance. The Vecran launched their offensive 6 months after Sentinel. They came with everything they had left, 500 warships including their newest and most powerful vessels. They drove deep into Alliance territory, burning colonies and destroying supply bases. They wanted to break the resistance through overwhelming force and terror. Lisa commanded the Alliance fleet. Jake stayed at Sentinel, coordinating logistics and intelligence. The Reaper's Edge split its consciousness between multiple ships providing tactical analysis. The war became a running battle across dozens of systems. The Alliance could not match the Vecran in straight fights, so they used mobility and coordination. They hit weak points. They ambushed supply convoys. They forced the Vecran to spread out. The war lasted 3 years. It was brutal and exhausting. Entire planets were devastated. Billions died on all sides. Jake aged 10 years in that time. His hair went gray. Lines appeared on his face that had not been there before. He sent people to die every day, and every day it got a little bit harder. But slowly and painfully, the Alliance started winning. The Vecran could not sustain losses at the rate they were taking them. Their economy began to collapse under the strain. Colonies that had supported the Empire started rebelling. The Vecran government fell and was replaced by a military junta that was even more brutal. That just made things worse. The final battle happened in the Vec Prime system. The Alliance fleet jumped in expecting heavy resistance. What they found instead was a Vecran government ready to negotiate. The junta had been overthrown. The new civilian government wanted peace before their entire civilization collapsed. The Treaty of Liberation was signed aboard the Alliance flagship. The Vecran agreed to withdraw to their core systems. They would give up control of all occupied territories. They would pay reparations to species they had oppressed. They would never again claim dominion over other peoples. In return, the Alliance agreed to peace and promised not to invade Vecrin space. Jake attended the signing. He stood next to Earth's president and representatives from a dozen species. He watched Vecrin officials sign documents that ended their 3,000-year empire. He should have felt triumph. Instead, he just felt tired. Lisa found him afterward in a quiet corridor. She looked as exhausted as he felt. "We won," she said. "We survived," Jake corrected. "That is all anyone really does." "The Reaper's Edge wants to talk to you. It says it is important." Jake followed her to the vault where the weapon rested. Its consciousness filled the room as soon as he entered. "You have done well, Jake Morrison," it said. "The Vecrin are humbled. My creators are avenged. I am satisfied with what you have accomplished." "What will you do now?" Jake asked. "Sleep. I have been awake for too long. 18,000 years of waiting and then 5 years of war. I am tired, Jake Morrison. I want to rest. Perhaps in another age another species will find me and I will wake again. Or perhaps not. The galaxy moves on whether I am part of it or not." "You changed everything," Jake said. "Without you, none of this would have happened. Without you, I would still be sitting in a scrapyard covered in dirt. You gave me purpose. I gave you knowledge. Together we changed the balance of power in this galaxy. That is enough for any lifetime." The light within the Reaper's Edge dimmed. Its consciousness retreated into depths Jake could not follow. The weapon that had started a war fell silent. Jake stood there for a long time just staring at the now dark sphere. Later he returned to Sentinel. The system had become the unofficial capital of human space. The shipyards were building civilian vessels now instead of warships. Colonies were being established on the habitable planets. Life was returning to normal, or at least a new version of normal. Jake retired from military command. He went back to what he knew best, which was fixing things. He opened a new repair shop on Sentinel Station. It was bigger than his old place on Station Ember, and the customers were better. He fixed ships for humans and Terrellians and Mexians and even the occasional Vecrin. Lisa stayed in the fleet. She became the supreme commander of Alliance naval forces. She visited Jake when she could, and they would sit and talk about the old days. The days when they were just two people trying to survive. Before the war. Before everything changed. Sometimes Jake thought about the sphere sitting in that scrapyard. If he had walked past it. If he had not bought it. If he had never opened it. How different would everything be? Billions of people would still be alive. The Vecrin Empire might still rule. Humanity would still be confined to its small corner of space. He decided he would not change anything. The cost had been terrible, but the alternative was worse. Humanity was free now. They had a place in the galaxy earned through blood and sacrifice. They had allies and respect. They had proven that they could stand against anyone. In the end, that was what mattered. The galaxy had tossed away something it thought was worthless. A human mechanic had found it and made it a weapon. Not just a weapon of destruction, but a weapon of change. The old order was gone. Something new was being built in its place. Jake Morrison had done that. A mechanic from a nowhere station who just wanted to fix things. He had fixed more than broken ships. He had fixed humanity's place in the universe. Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the broken engine core sitting on his workbench. Another Vecrin piece of junk that someone expected him to fix. He had been doing this for 15 years now, and every day felt the same. Station Ember floated in the neutral zone between human space and the Vecrin Empire. It was a place where people came when they had nowhere else to go. Jake had opened his repair shop here because rent was cheap, and customers were desperate enough to pay for his skills. The Vecrin had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They were tall beings made of crystal and light who treated humans like annoying insects. Humanity had only met them 40 years ago, and the meeting had not gone well. There had been a small war that humans lost badly. After that came the Treaty of Centauri, where Earth's government basically agreed to whatever the Vecrin wanted. Now humans bought Vecrin technology at crazy prices and stayed in their small corner of space like good little pets. Jake hated it, but there was nothing he could do about it. He was just a mechanic trying to make a living. He fixed what broke and tried not to think too much about the bigger picture. That was until the morning when everything changed. A Vecrin hauler had docked at Station Ember during the night. It dumped a massive load of scrap into the public salvage yard like it did every few months. Jake was there early with his scanner and his tools. Most salvage was worthless, but sometimes you could find components that still had life in them. The early bird got the worm, as his father used to say. He spent 2 hours digging through twisted metal and burnt circuits. Most of it was exactly what it looked like, which was garbage. Then his boot hit something solid under a pile of corroded plating. Jake pulled the plates away and stopped moving. Sitting in the dirt was a sphere about 2 meters wide. Its surface was smooth and dark with strange symbols covering every inch. Even covered in grime, Jake could tell this was different from anything he had seen before. He ran his scanner over it. The readings made no sense. The metal was not in any database. The weight was wrong for the size. There was something inside, but his scanner could not tell him what. Jake looked around to see if anyone else had noticed. The salvage yard was empty except for a few other scavengers working far away. He made a decision fast. The Vecran overseer barely looked up when Jake offered to buy the sphere. He paid 12 credits, which was basically nothing. The overseer waved him away with a gesture that Jake had learned meant go away and stop wasting my time. Jake borrowed a loader and got the sphere back to his shop before anyone could ask questions. Once inside with the door locked, Jake started cleaning the surface. It took 3 full days. The symbols became clearer as the dirt came away. They were not Vecran and definitely not human. Jake had seen a lot of alien writing in his 15 years, but this was completely new. The patterns were complex and beautiful in a way that made his head hurt if he looked too long. On the 4th day, his scanner picked up something. There was energy inside the sphere. Not much, but it was there and it was active. Whatever this thing was, it had power and it was still working after sitting in a scrapyard. Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was big. This was maybe the biggest thing he had ever found. He spent the next week mapping every symbol on the surface. He took pictures and ran them through every database he could access on Station Ember. Nothing matched. He sent encrypted messages to a few contacts asking if they recognized the patterns. Nobody did. Whatever this sphere was, it came from something old. Really old. His friend Lisa stopped by on day 8. She had been a military engineer before leaving Earth's defense forces. Lisa was one of the few people Jake trusted completely. She took one look at the sphere and whistled low. "Where did you get that?" she asked. "Vecran scrap heap," Jake said. "Vecran do not throw away anything that works." "I know." Lisa pulled out her own scanner and spent an hour going over the sphere. Her equipment was military grade and much better than what Jake owned. When she finished, she looked worried. "There is a power source inside," she said. "It is stable but active. This thing has been running for a long time, Jake. Maybe a very long time. How long? My scanner cannot tell. The technology is too different. But if I had to guess, I would say centuries, maybe more." They both stared at the sphere. Jake felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was beyond anything he understood. It could be dangerous. It could be worthless. It could be something that changed everything. "We need to open it," Jake said. "That could be really stupid," Lisa said. "I know." They worked together for the next 4 days. Lisa's military training helped a lot. She knew how to map energy flows and identify potential trigger mechanisms. They found that the symbols were not just decoration. They were part of the device itself. The power flowed through them in patterns that repeated and shifted. Jake noticed something on day 12. One sequence of symbols kept showing up. It matched a mathematical constant that humans had known for centuries. He showed Lisa and she nodded slowly. "It is a key," she said, "or part of one." Jake pressed the symbols in the right order. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sphere split open with a sound like breaking glass. Light poured out and filled the workshop. Jake and Lisa stepped back as holographic displays erupted into the air. There were star maps and equations and diagrams of things he could not begin to understand. Then a voice spoke. It filled the room and seemed to come from everywhere at once. The words were not in any language Jake knew, but somehow he understood them anyway. "I am the Reaper's Edge," the voice said. "Final weapon of the Korvath Empire. I have waited in silence for 18,000 years. Who awakens me?" Jake looked at Lisa. Her face was pale. The Korvath were legends, stories that old spacers told. A civilization that had ruled the galaxy long before the Vecran. Most people thought they were myths. "I am Jake Morrison," he said to the light. "This is Lisa Chen. We are humans." "Humans," the voice repeated. "A young species, organic, fragile. Why do you possess Vecran refuse?" "Because that is all they will sell us," Lisa said. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension in it. The light pulsed and seemed to think about that. "The Vecran," it said. "Yes, they endure still. They were servants once to the Korvath, slaves who inherited the galaxy when my creators fell. Show me this universe they have built.